Welcome everyone to our class, International Seminars on Health. Today, including me and Professor Ana Carolina, have a pleasure to have here with us Professor Matteo and Professor Giulia to talk with us a little bit. So welcome everyone here and also in YouTube. And I think that we have a great moment. So I will pass the word to Ana Carolina to present to us our guest. Thank you very much to be with us today.
Hello, everyone. So today it's an honor for us to have Dr. Matteo Vittuari and Giulia Stanzani. They're our guests today in this seminar. Dr. Vittuari is an associate professor at the University of Bologna in Italy, where he works at the Department of Agricultural and Food Sciences. He holds the PhD in Agricultural Economics and Policy and has consolidated experience in the field of food systems and sustainability. Professor Vittuari's academic pathway and research trajectory is strongly oriented toward the analysis of sustainable food systems, with particular emphasis on food losses and waste, circular economy, and the environmental, social, and economic dimensions of food policies. He has been actively involved in several international research projects and collaborations, contributing to the advancement of knowledge and policy-oriented strategies in these areas. He also collaborates with international organizations and research networks, reinforcing the interface between science and public policy. His work has also contributed to the development of innovative approaches to improve the sustainability of food systems, particularly in the context of global challenges such as climate changes and food security. We also have Giulia Stanzani, who is a PhD student in the Agricultural, Environmental, and Food Science and Technology at the University of Bologna, specializing in international cooperation and sustainable development. Her research explores how agricultural and food policies can drive through transitions towards sustainable food systems by applying the life cycle thinking methodologies. She evaluates the impacts of agri-food practices and policies from an holistic and multidimensional perspective. She is actively involved in various Horizon Europe research projects and national initiatives that address sustainable agricultural, food systems, and policy innovation. Through her research, she seeks to advocate evidence-based solutions that support the ecological transitions and foster cooperation in the agri-food sector. She previously earned the master's degree in sciences and management of nature, specializing in international curriculum of global change, ecology, and sustainable development goals. Please, Professor Matteo, Professor Giulia, feel free to begin the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ana Carolina. Thank you for the invitation, and welcome to everybody. Good afternoon. And I might leave Giulia getting started with a short introduction, then I will go back after Giulia.
Good afternoon. Many thanks for the introduction. As you mentioned, I'm a PhD candidate, and I'm working in the research team of Professor Vittuari, mostly applicating the life cycle thinking approach to evaluate the environmental, social, and economic impacts of the food system. And the main goal of my research is to identify trade-offs and synergies that can better inform evidence-based policy design. I'm currently working on different Horizon Europe funded projects, as well as different international and national initiatives that have the main aim to drive the sustainable transition. So many thanks. I pass the words to Professor Vittuari.
Okay, Matteo Vittuari, and I'm a bit older than Giulia, unfortunately. And so my main background is in economics, and I moved to work on food systems with my master thesis, and then with my PhD thesis that was focusing on rural development and agricultural development in Bosnia and Herzegovina in Europe. Then after my PhD work that I conducted between the University of Bologna and the University of Columbia, Missouri in the US, I made a postdoc in the US at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. And then I started a number of consultancies, either with the private sector, with private companies, often working on European topics related to the common agricultural policy, so the agricultural policy of the European Union, or working also with international organizations like FAO. With FAO, for instance, I was engaged in a number of evaluations related to Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Then at a certain point, I decided that my place was in Europe, so I went back to Europe, and I thought that my place was also in the academic system. So I started back to work together with the University of Bologna, starting teaching a number of courses related to agricultural policy, food policy, and economics, and starting to work on a number of international projects. As Giulia was anticipating, our group is strongly engaged with the European projects. At the moment, we have over 15 projects of different typology. The most important one for us is Horizon Europe, which is the founding line dedicated to research in Europe, but we are engaged also in Interreg, which is a territorial type of cooperation at the European level. We are engaged in national projects. We are engaged in projects with international organizations, like at the moment we are carrying out a number of projects together with FAO, so the Food and Agricultural Organization, and SIAM, which is a network of institutions in the Mediterranean area. And we are working with a number of countries outside Europe, like Albania, Kenya, Tunisia, Jordan, Egypt, and Azerbaijan. And we are working a lot also with companies and institutions. So we have both an academic side of our work, but also a side which is looking a lot at the engagement with companies and with local authorities. We are a fairly large group because at the moment we are almost 20 researchers working in different projects, and something that is quite important is, and quite specific, we are quite interdisciplinary. So we are trying to integrate and to engage colleagues with different disciplinary profiles. At the moment, as Anna Carolina was anticipating, I'm full professor at the University of Bologna, again, economics and policy of food and agriculture. During my career, I also served as a delegate for international cooperation at the University of Bologna. So I always had this international character in most of the activities that I have done. And in this moment, I'm serving also in double appointment. So I'm partially with the University of Bologna and partially with other university in Azerbaijan, so in the Caucasus. In Azerbaijan, I'm working with other university, which is an important university in Azerbaijan, where I'm serving as dean of a new school of agricultural and food science that has been founded in 2023. So basically, neither me or Giulia today are in Italy. Giulia is in Spain. I'm in Azerbaijan. So moving on our research topics and on what we are doing. We are working on food system sustainability in general, and touching a number of different issues, starting from food losses and waste, healthy diets, specific cropping systems, and basically we are using 3 different type of methodological approaches. One entry point is individual behavior. So we are applying behavioral economics to understand behavioral patterns in the decision-making process of individuals related to food, but also in the decision-making process of farmers or companies. And in this sense, in this framework, we are conducting economic interventions, economic experiments, using nudging type of experiments, using different behavioral frameworks like the motivation, opportunity, and ability to try to explain the different determinants that are leading to certain behaviors in individuals. So we are looking at individual behaviors, but we are looking also at systemic approaches. So we are trying to use approaches like life cycle thinking, so with a combination of life cycle assessment, life cycle costing, and social life cycle assessment in order to try to understand the impacts of individual behaviors, of supply chains, of production systems, in terms of environmental impacts, economic or monetary impacts, and social impacts. And since we are economists, what is extremely interesting is to look at the interface, so the trade-off between environmental, economic, and social impact. So if I'm investing in reducing environmental impact, what is going to happen in terms of cost or social benefits? And within this type of approaches, a very important characteristic that we have is that we always try to take participatory approaches. So we engage stakeholders, either the private sector, companies, or public institutions, in order to try to understand their needs, to try to work on societal challenges, understanding also what are the needs and the expectations of the different stakeholders. And we usually approach any work by creating tables where we are discussing our research work together with the stakeholders from the beginning to the end. So trying to get their inputs, to get their information they can provide. So moving forward, as I was anticipating, we have these 2 different focus. If we look at behavioral economic approaches, we are applying this type of approaches to food waste and losses, to sustainability. For example, we are working a lot on catering services as school canteens, hospital canteens. If we take life cycle thinking and impact assessment as a domain, we are working on different cropping systems. We are working on different food environments with the idea to understand what are the most important hotspots for improvement of a food supply chain or a production system. And lately, we are investing a lot on true cost accounting. So the understanding of how to internalize environmental and social externalities in the cost of food, starting from the idea that the current cost of food is mainly related to the monetary value of the different operations that are leading to the transformation of a raw material into a food product that can be consumed by an individual. But this monetary pathway, it is not taking into account economic, environmental, and social impacts. And we are applying this concept in different ways, because we are linking true cost accounting to life cycle thinking, but we are also looking at true cost accounting in terms of perception of the consumer. So what is the perception of consumers in terms of the value of a certain food product? And to make a few examples, we are working on bread, we are working on tuna, but we are working also on the true cost of the Mediterranean diet. So moving forward, as I was anticipating, we are working on different projects. Projects at the European level usually have quite an important size financially. If we look at the project that I'm sharing at the moment, Food Circus, which is focusing on developing circular solutions for keeping food waste out of Central Europe schools, it has a value of about 2 million euro, and it is engaging countries, partners from a number of European countries, Austria, Italy, Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, with more than 60 European schools involved. So the size of the project is extremely interesting. And what is interesting is also the cultural diversity that we bring into the project. And this project is one of the many projects where we are applying behavioral economic approaches. I was anticipating before that we are working on a project with FAO, which is this food strategic assistance for the coalition Food is Never Waste. But we are working also on farmers' behavior, for instance. So to try to understand how to nudge, how to stimulate farmers to take more sustainable decisions or more sustainable behaviors. So we have a group of projects that are related to behavioral economics, but we have also projects that are related to life cycle thinking. Another example of project, in this case, it is a Horizon 2020. It is the project Conserva. Conserva is focusing on developing evidence-based support for transition to agroecological with management in diverse farming systems and European regions. You see here the budget is even higher, 5 million, with, again, a number of different European countries that are working together in order to develop solutions in technical terms, but also in terms of policy. Projects in Europe are an important lever for the European Commission and are an important policy tools, because the European Commission look at projects as a powerful tool to respond to the most important societal needs. And you can see here, again, a number of projects where we are engaged, both funded by the European Commission, but also projects that we are carrying out together with companies, like the case of the Impulse project, or a project that we are running together with Dr. Scher, which is an Italian company. The third, let's say, area is the one that I was anticipating, which is related to true cost accounting. In this case, we are part of the, let's say, the first project in Europe that was looking at the true cost of food, that was even higher in terms of budget, engaging a fairly high number of partners. And the objective was to support the transition towards sustainable food systems by proposing a harmonized methodology to calculate externalities in climate, biodiversity, environmental, social, and health along the food supply chain. And what is interesting here, we are working also at the national level with a project which is called On Foods, where we are working on the true cost from the perception of consumers, looking at bread in particular. And we are working with Bolton. Bolton is one of the largest Italian multinational corporation producing mainly tuna. It is one of the most important players at the global level for tuna production, and we are working together with them in order to estimate the true cost of tuna. And in this case, the instrument that we are using is the co-financing of PhD positions. So we have 2 PhD positions that are co-founded between the University of Bologna and the Bolton Group. So moving forward, we can say that we are taking a food system approach. So we are looking at the complexity of food systems, looking at societal impacts, environmental impacts, health-related impacts, the influence of policy, and the influence of the economic system on food system. To some extent, clearly, we are taking a tradition. We are not taking anymore a traditional food supply chain approach, which is sometimes designed or intended as a linear approach, but we are trying to address and understand the complexity of food systems, looking at the interaction between communities, individuals, policymakers, the environment, natural resources, social capital, and all the different interactions that can characterize and shape our food system. An important entry point that we are taking and that is going to help us today is the idea of food environments. So the concept of food environments. We can define a food environment as the consumer interface with the food system. So encompassing the availability, affordability, convenience, promotion, quality, and sustainability of food. If we want to make it more simple, a food environment is the place where we take food decisions. So a food environment is an household, a food environment is a canteen, a food environment is a restaurant. Potentially, a food environment is also a food supply chain to some extent. So if we take a food environment type of approach, an example of food environment can be a canteen. So we are working quite a lot on canteens, especially on school canteens. So today we are going to share a bit of a work that we are conducting within the context of a living lab that we call l'ARISO, so the Laboratorio di Ristorazione Sostenibile, so a Sustainable Catering Lab, which is a participatory living lab which is engaging schools, teachers, families, chefs, school staff, and other stakeholders in the supply chain to improve sustainability within institutional food service, or let's say public food service. So we are working together with a number of stakeholders. The most important are clearly our department, the Emilia-Romagna region, that is the region in Italy where Bologna is located, which is in the central north part of Italy, the network of dietitians of the Emilia-Romagna region, and we have established basically a table which is meeting periodically in order to work together in the design of interventions, but also in data collection, data analysis, and the development of different scenarios. So if we want to move, let's say, if we want to take a participatory approach, we need to engage the stakeholders, teachers, catering managers, and nutritionists. And this is extremely important to us because it is also a driver for success in the sense that if we are not engaging stakeholders, it will be very difficult to work in the schools because they are supporting us in terms of data collection. They are opening us the doors of the schools. So taking a co-design or a participatory type of approach, it is needed both for the quality of the work that we are doing, because they can, let's say, provide feedbacks about the consistency of our proposals or our ideas. They can drive us and they can help us in choosing the best interventions, but they are really working in a tangible way together with us in the school canteens. So moving forward and looking at real interventions, looking at a couple of examples. The first intervention that we have carried out in the frame of l'ARISO was an intervention that we carried out between 2022 and 2023. And starting from the idea that the consumption of veggies in primary schools is low, so with a very low contribution to healthy diets, and at the same time we have a fairly high amount of food waste. So we wanted to design, together with the stakeholders, an intervention in order to try to decrease food waste and increase the consumption and the intake of veggies in children's diets. So having and targeting a double benefit. So less food waste and more veggies in terms of intake from the children. The intervention that we designed, it was basically the serving of the side dish before the first course. So we changed the order of the service. This is quite Italian in the sense that in Italy, usually you have a main dish, which is pasta, and then you have a second dish that can be meat together with some veggies, and then eventually something else like bread or like fruit. And the order in which we serve the food is quite systematic. So we start with the main, so pasta, then meat and veggies. Bread is going with meat and veggies, and then eventually fruit. So what we did was to reverse the order, so to change the order. Instead of serving pasta, meat, veggies, bread, and fruit, we anticipated the veggies with the idea that the veggies are the most discarded food product, but it is also the most important product in order to contribute to a healthy diet. So we wanted to serve the veggies in the moment where the children have the peak of hunger at the beginning of the meal. The story is quite simple now, but it took over 6 months in terms of designing different options and choosing the option that I'm presenting to you now. You can see in the map on the right the Emilia-Romagna region, where we have a number of provinces. Bologna is the capital of the region, but then we have Ferrara, Modena, Parma, Piacenza, Ravenna, Rimini, Forlì, so a number of cities. And we did work at the regional level, working in 26 primary schools with the students from the 3rd grade, so to have a sample that was as solid as possible. And we did work approximately with 900 children, so a quite high number of schools and a quite high number of children. The second intervention, that is dated 2024-2025, also in this case, the process was the co-design of the intervention together with the stakeholders. In this case, the intervention was more related to awareness. So the objective was, again, the reduction of food waste of vegetables among primary school children and the improvement of the quality of the diet. And the intervention in this case was to co-design a poster focusing on a social norm and displaying it in the canteens. So we wanted to test the influence of social norms on the behavior of children. So basically, a very important element in this story that I didn't mention before is that we always work with a control group, no? So we have a group of intervention. In this case, we had a group of schools, of 11 schools, where we were co-designing the poster, and a group of 11 schools that were the schools of control, where nothing was happening. So there was not the co-design of the poster. And in this case, again, the ambition or the objective was to try to understand if this exercise was somehow changing the behavior of children. The sample was also in this case quite large, because we did work with the 22 primary schools, in this case with the 4th grade and with about 650 children. So, in terms of methodology, what is very important is the sample. What is very important is the use of the control group in order to understand what is the change. And also, as I think in any exercise related to food waste, it was important to have an understanding about how we are going to collect data. And so basically we collected data through direct measurement of food intake before and after the treatment. And this is extremely important to have, let's say, consistent data. Data collection was quite heavy. It was possible because we are a fairly large group, and we have been we got a lot of support from the stakeholders. At the moment, we are working on, let's say, digitalization strategies, also because it is heavy not only the collection of data, but then also the digitalization of data if they are not collected already with digital tools. So, moving forward, what type of results we got? So the initiative has had significant and diverse effects on food waste. So the way the service is managed, so the method of meal distribution, it is quite important. It plays a fairly important role in the effectiveness of the intervention. And there are no one-size-fits-all type of intervention. What was interesting, also by having a fairly high number of schools, we have seen that the interventions were working in certain contexts, were not working in other contexts. So the demographics are extremely important. Urban schools are different from rural schools. The typology of families that are characterizing a certain schools are important. So there are different characteristics and different variables that have an impact. And what levels rise significantly in school? So the level of food waste rise significantly in schools where the children often complain during meal times. The teachers never promote or stimulate the children to eat. The role of teachers is extremely important because it is not harmonized by guidelines. Every teacher can behave as it wants. So working with the children, stimulating the children to eat, doing nothing, just looking at the telephone and sitting in a corner of a canteen. But the role of teacher is extremely important. There are no unwritten rules regarding the minimum amount to be eaten, and this is also important. And there are no posters illustrating healthy diets, or providing information about food waste. So we did work in order to try to better understand how to influence the behavior on one side. On the other side, we did want to work with a more systematic type of approach. Scientifically, so with a scientific base, but also with the idea of providing the operators of the schools with a relevant toolkit. So Giulia is going to take us through the work that we have done in order to develop a toolkit for integrated sustainability assessment of school canteen meals.
Many thanks, Matteo, for the introduction. As you mentioned, today I will just delve deeper into another output of the project Lariso that was mentioned earlier. So I will focus on our toolkit for assessing sustainability in school canteens. And specifically, I will focus on the case of the Emilia-Romagna region that we have already explored earlier, And this tool is currently included into the guidelines of the region for the offer of healthy and sustainable food and drinks in school canteens. The tool is, of course, meant for a wide panel of stakeholders, of course, schools and collective catering and managers, but also nutrition and health professionals, as well as public institutions and local authorities. And of course, it is useful for policy and decision makers. The main objective of this tool is to identify and promote the adoption of best practices to increase the sustainability of school canteens, and also to trigger virtuous cycle in terms of best practices that are spread all over the territory. And it leverages a life cycle thinking approach, as I was mentioning earlier, and integrates different sustainability dimensions, integrating environmental, social, and nutritional elements. Of course, we think that our research needs to be embedded into the use of a participatory approach, and in this way, this toolkit, of course, was developed taking together different stakeholders and different perspectives, and with the aim of creating a practical and useful tool based on actual needs. So one of the key aims is also to support monitoring and comparisons between schools, between contexts, in an objective way. If you are even more interested about the design process, of course, we have publication from our research group that was published last year on the Journal of Cleaner Production, and we'll take you through the design process and how the stakeholders have been included. So in here, just a bit of the snapshot of how it works in terms of filling in. It takes into account two evaluations, first a desk evaluation and then an on-site evaluation, and also entails two different meals, both lunch and snack. The tool is very practical and straightforward. The practitioner just needs to fill in the relevant fields, and the sustainability scores are automatically generated both for each sustainability dimension and also aggregated into a final single score. We are currently working mostly on the visualization, so this is our path forward, let's say. We are developing this dashboard. Currently, it's just a demo mode, but we are going further with this. And as you can see in here, more or less, it's meant to be a page that you can explore, and based on your interests, your expertise, you can delve deeper into some specific aspects, some specific dimensions with interactive graphs. For example, in here on the right side, on the upper right corner, you can see a map of the Emilia-Romagna region, and also the distribution of scores and a bit of the coverage of the data. And one of the main improvements of our tool is also to make sure that you can also compare different data sets together. So you can, for example, compare the analysis from last year to the current year in order to understand also in a granular way how schools changed the trends through time. And just I will conclude with the main added value of the tool. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, and as we mentioned earlier, key is the collaboration with stakeholders for the definition of common objectives and indicators for a tool. And also it is extremely important, as also Matteo was mentioning earlier, to keep up with this open dialogue with stakeholders, because it can in this way enhance the continuous improvement. Of course, it offers an integrated sustainability assessment because it identifies critical issues and levers for each sustainability area, also providing an aggregated final score. But you can see, for example, which of the areas is the main driver of sustainability in terms of hotspots and in terms of leverage points. And it also provides some comparable results across regions, across groups, schools, and contexts. One of the main aim of our research overall is also to make our tools, our studies transferable. So in this case, of course, we have talked about the Emilia-Romagna region, but the the idea is to implement this tool also into different contexts, both national and international. And of course, such tools are pivotal for providing a ground for an evidence-based support for policy and action. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Giulia. And we can move forward to the conclusions, and a couple of remarks before getting to the conclusions. A very important point is, I believe, the fact that we are working both with academic objectives. So as Giulia was anticipating, we did publish this work on the Journal of Cleaner Production. We did publish the work on the intervention on food policy. And this is clearly important because we are researchers, and that is an important target. At the same time, we are also paying attention a lot to the dialogue with the stakeholders, as you have seen from the beginning by establishing tables and discussing with a variety of stakeholders, but also with the ambition to provide stakeholders with tools like the toolkit. And so tools that can help stakeholders to have a better understanding of the impacts or the potential effect of an intervention. We started making these, let's say, developing these toolkits in a fairly, let's say, rustic way by using Excel. Now we are moving to a more sophisticated way where we are trying to integrate and to use digital tools that are more accessible and easier to be used. Another important point is the scale. In some cases, we are working, like in the case of L'Ariso, at the regional level, so at the sub-national level, but the aim is to scale up. So at the moment, we are bringing these interventions on school canteens. I would enlarge it in canteens because we are working also in university canteens, in resorts, as I was anticipating in different countries. So we are using this L'Ariso model or L'Ariso approach in Tunisia, in Azerbaijan, in Egypt, in Albania. So in different countries in order to understand how to scale the model and how to tailor the model to different contexts. I was making the example of the Italian way of eating, which is very systematic. Clearly, we need to adapt our interventions to local culture, to local habits, to the local meal planning system. And these elements are very important together with the language. And what we did learn by working in different projects and in different stakeholders, and with different stakeholders, is that we need to understand how to change language, because the language that we need to have when we are talking with public authorities or with companies, it is different from the language that we are using within our, let's say, more narrow research environment. So moving to the conclusions, and Giulia, if you can switch the slide. So moving from individual choices to life cycle thinking. So we are working on food-related choices that are often perceived as isolated actions, such purchasing, storing, preparing, or discarding food. However, every decision is connected to another. So it is a broader network of activities and decisions that extend across the entire food system. So we take individual decisions that have an impact, a larger impact. So that is why we want to adopt a life cycle perspective. So life cycle thinking, which is the scientific base that we have used to develop the toolkit, allow us to consider all the stages of the journey of a product, from resource extraction and production to distribution, consumption, and disposal. So if we want to talk about food losses and waste, food losses and waste are happening at any stage, generating consequences that extend far behind the point where they happen. So we need to understand systemic impacts. So looking at individual impacts only, it is not enough. So a life cycle perspective reveals how food waste translates into wasted land, water, energy, labor, capital, while also contributing to generating greenhouse gas emissions and social cost. What might appear as being a local action has potential global implications. And from here, we can move to understand that we have a number of, let's say, hidden or invisible impacts. So while life cycle thinking helps identifying impacts across the food system, true cost accounting provides a framework to quantify and value them. I think that the value of food is one of the most important concepts around the understanding of the sustainability of food system today. So we want to integrate multiple dimensions, and the true cost accounting allow us to do so because it brings together environmental, economic, social, and health outcomes, allowing decision makers to understand the full consequences of food production and consumption patterns. So basically, we are supporting sustainable transitions if we do understand better the value of food. So by translating hidden costs and benefits into meaningful and reliable information, true cost accounting helps to identify interventions that reduce food losses and waste by generating also value for the society. So what we are doing at the moment as a group, we are investing more and more in combining life cycle thinking and true cost accounting in order to move behind the market prices and having a better understanding of the real value of food and the resources that are embedded within it. So this is a bit of our pathway, and many thanks if you did follow us until now, and we will be very happy if you have any question for us and we can have a bit of a conversation.
Okay, thank you very much for the very inspiring seminar that both Professor Vittuari and Giulia have presented. We have some questions to make a better understanding about your careers, your work. And I think when I listened to your speech, some points call my attention. Let's think about multidisciplinary approaches and partnerships in different cultures, working as a network, and developing interventions through evidence-based methodologies. At my view, I think this holistic approach answers to the complexity of the sustainability as a concept, and it in its multi dimensions. So I'd like to think a little bit about your careers and think and ask, what key experiences have led you both to focus your research on sustainability and food systems and governance? What was the key points that led you both to this kind of research?
Giulia, do you want to start?
Okay, gladly. Okay, so in my case, it was actually my experience for my master thesis, where I had the opportunity to explore not only a new setting, but also a new culture, because I was I was focusing on this project on food waste drivers at the household level in Azerbaijan. So I had the opportunity to change a bit, not only professionally, let's say, but also personally, a bit the setting and explore a new dimension. And for me, it was very key because that was the opportunity and the experience that led me to, in the end, focus on this for my professional path.
Okay, in my case, I think, since I'm quite older, sustainability, maybe until 15 years ago, was more something based on a let's say, fairly clear at the theoretical level, but there was no measurement. So that was quite an inspiration, was quite a challenge or an ambition to start to find approaches to measure sustainability. To make an example, life cycle thinking is not probably the best approach ever, because as any methodology has a number of limitations, but it is a language that allows to talk about sustainability, because it is combining on or comparing environmental impacts with the economic impacts with social impacts. And that was an important starting point. Another starting point was my PhD, that was in international cooperation and sustainable development policies, that it was mixed between economics, anthropology, political sciences. So I had the opportunity to discuss and reflect with a number of colleagues with very different views. And it is something that I'm keeping as characteristic of my career. So I'm still having a strong dialogue with anthropologists. I'm very fascinated by ethnography. We are working a lot with the nutritionists. We are working a lot with psychologists. So trying to understand really the different, the multifaceted dimensions of food and food systems.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask another thing for the both of you. From your experience, what role multi-level governance arrangements play in helping or limiting food systems transformation? Let's think about these different countries, partnerships that you have, and these partnerships with different governments. So what role do multi-level governance arrangements play in helping or limiting food systems transformation?
Okay, this is quite a question. It is so multi-level governance. As I was anticipating, we are working with the Regione Emilia-Romagna, and which is not enough, because it is not the lower level of governance, no? Because the lower level of governance in the case of food canteens, for instance, is the municipality. So even in a situation fairly small, if we think globally as a region, the diversity is very high. And because the management of schools is very different, and not all the municipalities are willing to work together or to contribute, even if you have the support of the regional entity. And so the work is potentially very challenging, but what is interesting is the diversity that you have within a single region, especially because you have a number of local governance systems that are characterizing a fairly small area as a region. And if we think about Emilia-Romagna, that is the model. But if we look at Milano, for instance, which is a different model, because in Milano we have most of the catering system, which is managed by the Milano municipality, which is managing all the schools within Milano, which is a much larger city compared to Bologna or to any other city in the Emilia-Romagna region. And the governance is extremely interesting because it is very different. If it is different between two Italian cities or two Italian regions, it is very interesting how different it is. We did work in Tunisia or Egypt or Azerbaijan. So understanding the governance is extremely important. And that is why you cannot work without the stakeholders, because you need to have them as entry points. Because in many situations as researchers, you don't want to fight against the governance system, no? You want to be taken on board on the governance system by actors that are already in the system. And what we can do is, and what we did find very interesting, and that is a big motivation in our work. We had the chance to influence a bit the governance of the Emilia-Romagna region, because with our work, and that was quite an impact, we did help them to design the new guidelines for sustainable catering in school canteens in the Emilia-Romagna region. But so we did influence the way the governance is behaving towards kids and families, but we have been taken from the governance itself into the heart of the system, because we were working with them. I don't know if I did reply properly to your question or not.
Yeah, I think so. Your speech is a little about this participatory methodology and how do stakeholders can help achieving the goals that the research group have had pointed, right? So yeah,
you need to work with the others. You need to understand the language. You need to understand the context. There is little space for working in isolation. So it's maybe 20 years ago, a researcher was more a lab researcher in any sense. Now the laboratory is something broader. A laboratory is a situation where you are working with this variety of stakeholders. So we should not work in isolation.
Perfect. That's perfect. We have a question at YouTube chat. We had a participation from Professor Cristine Gabriel. She asked, as you know, we are working to strengthen Brazil's national school feeding program, one of the largest public schools feeding programs in the world, and to advance sustainability within it. And she asked, based on your experience, what would be your main recommendations or priorities for a program like ours?
Well, I would go back in, say, developing a network of stakeholders working together and taking a collaborative approach. That is extremely important. And without the collaboration of the other relevant stakeholders, it will be very difficult. A second point is we want to make interventions, we want to try to make a change, but we need to measure the change. So measurement is extremely important, because at the end, if we are measuring, so there are a number of situations also in literature where the intervention seems nice, but the effectiveness of the intervention is not measured. So measuring if an intervention is working or not, and measuring the capacity of an intervention to bring in change, it is extremely important. And policymakers are listening if you are measuring and if you are proving that, let's say, an intervention is really bringing a change. Especially in the food waste context, we did a bit the reverse, in the sense that if you look the literature on food waste, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, a lot was focused on the quantification of food waste without promoting any intervention. So, but quantifying is not enough, no? You want to quantify if you are bringing an intervention that is bringing change. So I need to design something to implement this intervention, and then to measure the intervention. Measuring before, so the measuring the business as usual, so the current situation, and measuring what happened after the implementation of the intervention. So I think collaboration is extremely important. Changing or trying to transform food system is a collective action. It is a collaborative action on one side. Measurement is also extremely important. And it is a bit, as I was saying before, about the, I don't know, why you are working on sustainability, because sustainability was too theoretical, and the challenge was, let's measure sustainability. So let's identify metrics that can help us to understand what sustainability really is.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The last question, most for Professor Matteo, but also for Giulia, is, based in your experience, what skills should early career researchers develop to engage more effectively in policy-oriented research and interdisciplinary projects?
Okay, maybe Giulia can start. So I get also Giulia perspectives, no? So also because we are a fairly large group and we are quite specific, I believe. So Giulia can say something starting from there, if you want.
No, of course. If I understood well, so you're asking like which perspective you should take when working in a research, like in a policy-oriented research environment.
Yes, because when I listened to your speech and about your group's path work, it's very inspiring and makes me want to work to I don't know, to also bring policies oriented by research to promote sustainability. So as an early career research, what kind of skills should I develop to engage more effectively in this policy-oriented research?
Okay, so for me it's key, but we have already touched upon that many times, to have a hybrid approach, not only a top-down but also a bottom-up approach, because for example, I had the opportunity to work in this Horizon Europe funded project, which mainly focuses on the development of bio-based supply chains, and specifically leveraging the application, let's say, of two innovative crops. And in this case, of course, there are several stakeholders at stake that need to be considered, and we had a lot of workshops and opportunities in which we established a dialogue with them, and it was very, let's say, not surprising, but complex to see how different perspectives mix, and also how everyone wants his own. Let's say we have seen that the food system is very complex, and there are different areas, many areas, and of course you should consider the perspective of the farmer, of the policymaker, of the researcher. So there are different perspectives, and of course it's difficult to find the common spot. So that's why also a bit let's say, not only doing our research in a very abstract way, but also listening to different perspectives is key for a consistent and an effective path forward. And yeah, to me, that was it, like being able to listen and a bit expand the perspective, not only a specific area, but also different approaches, different areas, different expertise. So that's it.
Okay, so on my side, I can try, let's say, to share what I'm looking in a young researcher if I'm in an interview for a position. No? So first of all, methodological competencies. That is the basis. Nothing new, but they need to be solid. I'm going to be impressed if there is a pathway, an evolution pathway, where I see that the career is moving forward step by step in terms of development of competencies, and also in terms of publication pathway. I'm not getting crazy if you have 20 papers. I'm very interested if you have 5 nice publications in nice journals that are telling a nice story about you and about your competencies. Context comprehension and adaptation is extremely important. I feel immediately if a young researcher is able to understand the context where she is or is, and if she has the capacity to adapt, to tailor herself and her language to a context, and that is very important. So then soft skills are very important. The capacity to work in a group. So I believe that I would feel a bit, let's say, not fully comfortable if you did publish as a single author in any work that you have done. I would appreciate if you have been within a group, so showing that you have a capacity to work in a group context, especially if the group is multidisciplinary, so that you show that despite having a very solid methodological background, you are able to work in a multidisciplinary group. Also because I value a lot curiosity and motivation. Motivation is extremely important, but and curiosity is also very important. I think it is the heart of being a researcher, no?
Right. Thank you very much. So we're going through the conclusion of our seminar. We have some comments from Eric. Thank you, Matteo and Giulia, for the amazing explanation. Laura is also clapping hands through emojis. I will pass the words for Professor Ana Carolina so she can lead us to the conclusion.
Thank you very much, Ana Carolina, to invite our special guests, and to Dr. Matteo and Giulia for this inspiring seminar. It's very nice to see how you work, and here at our postgraduate program in nutrition, we also have this interdisciplinary approach of sustainability. So Ana Carolina Barros and Christine work with this in the context of the school canteens, and we have also other professors working on the food systems and with the farmers and the restaurants context. So it's very nice to see how all of the sustainability and approaches have to work together to really work, and how the social issues are important, the practice, and to have people with, like you said, soft skills to manage this research and to talk with the stakeholders and the actors. So it was really inspiring, and congratulations for your work, and we hope you continue being successful in your trajectory. Thank you very much. And thank you all our audience. We will expect for you to be with us also in 2 weeks when you have the last day of our seminars. Thank you and have a good weekend.
Thank you to all, and thank you for the invitation once again, and keep in touch with everybody.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.